So I want to start off by asking you some questions. When I ask these questions, I want you to think about the journeys that you've gone on to get to this point in your life. Think about the interventions that have taken place or the moments of serendipity. What role did school or university play? Who's played a role in your journey? Who's helped you along the way and given you opportunities? So the first question I want to ask is raise your hand if you're satisfied with everything you've achieved in your life so far. Less than I thought, actually. So those that raise your hand, give yourself a pat on the back. Second question, raise your hand if there's more to come. You haven't reached the pinnacle of what you hope. Okay, so all of us. So we're all on some kind of journey. Okay, the third question I want to ask is, raise your hand if you are happy. That's a good amount. There's a couple of people who didn't raise their hand who were the ones who seemed to be smiling. Bit of a trick question because what is happiness? But in the context of this, for me, it's about fulfilling potential. And I think you can probably all agree that for us to have all got to the point where we can be in this room here together today, we've had a certain level of privilege which has enabled us to get to this point. And I want you to think about that as I go through this talk. So back in 2010, alongside my co-founder Johan, we created a company called We Are Human. We Are Human practices value-based entrepreneurship. We build new ventures and invest in others that aim to impact people's lives for the better. We also set up We Are Human as a platform for ourselves to learn and discover the things that we wanted to spend our time on. One of the companies we ended up building, which I'm going to talk about in more detail later on, is called Kahoot. It's a global learning brand that's used by millions of people every day all around the world. And when we went on our journey to creating Kahoot, we asked ourselves the same question that I'm going to address in this talk today, which is, how must technology adapt to enable relevant learning experiences for tomorrow's world? And like every challenge that we take on at We Are Human, we like to focus on the people side before we look on the technology side. So it's maybe a bit of a trick question because I'm not going to talk too much about technology itself. And that is because for us to understand the role of technology in the future of education, I think we need to change our views and refocus our ideas about what education is. This kind of one-size-fits-all model is just not relevant to such an unpredictable and ever-changing world that we live in today. To me personally, I like to talk about the human behavior of learning before we talk about the institutional side of education, because that for me is what education should be about. And learning is this kind of deeply personal and emotional experience that we all go through. I think it's a pursuit to fulfill potential. And it's lifelong. It doesn't stop the minute you leave school or university. It's with us at every single point. And so if you think back to those questions I asked you at the very beginning, it becomes clear that something in our education system is failing us when so few people have access to the privilege that we have had that's enabled us to get to this very point. And when we look at how technology is currently playing out in education, really what it's doing is just reinforcing this outdated learning paradigm. Because, not to dwell on it, it's been talked about already, but our education system is more than 150 years old. And when you apply technology to something, yes, you can make it more efficient, you can automate it, but in the context of learning, unless you're innovating pedagogically, i.e. you're changing the way people learn itself, then you're actually creating experiences that aren't so relevant. So what you see a lot of edtech companies are doing is getting caught up in this circus of education. So they are selling into schools, they are tracking students, they are preparing for exams, all the stuff that's related to the old school world of education that isn't so relevant anymore. And so for me, I think this represents a critical point where we need to flip on its head our view of what education is and get to the heart of why we're in the business of education itself. And to do that, we need to go back to this human behavior of learning itself and make sure that that is our priority. And to do that, we need to place emphasis on the learner themselves. So if we treat learning as this lifelong experience that's with us at every step of the way on our journey, we can start to think about maybe what the role of school should be. Because school is still a very important place where people come together. That human-to-human time we need to maximize. So maybe school is about teaching people to think and decide like problem solvers. It's about teaching emotional intelligence so that we can empathize and understand those that are different from us and that those that didn't have the level of privilege and access that we did. It's all about teaching collaboration so that we can get together with people and solve some of the challenges that we face as humanity. Is it about teaching self-direction so that when we're not offered those opportunities that some people are privileged to have, we can make the right decisions ourselves as we go on this journey throughout life? And in this world that will be driven by artificial intelligence, I think we need to get back to the heart of what it means to be human again. And for me, education is the foundation of democracy and humanity. And you can probably all agree with me that we're at a pretty critical point in history where we need to make some big moves now. So think of some of the challenges that we're facing. You know, the obvious one that's talked about, climate change. We have broken political systems. We still have deep inequality and poverty. We have things like surveillance capitalism, and actually addiction to technology has become a thing. And this is just to name a few things. And if we as humanity are to solve these problems, we need people to see it as their purpose to take on these challenges. And is that the role of education, to create the leaders of tomorrow? The people that want to help break down barriers, who want to reduce hate and connect people together. To do that, we need to rethink how we teach people. And I think that's about designing new forward-thinking pedagogies. And when we launched Kahoot, we realized that technology is just technology. When you launch technology into a learning space, you're not going to be able to impact people's lives unless it has pedagogical innovation. So we launched Kahoot on the pedagogy that we called learners to leaders. So for you, those of you that don't know what Kahoot is, it creates these social learning spaces using gaming and play. And you can play games about absolutely anything, and all those games are created by the community around the world. And Kahoot is designed for the social human behavior of learning together. So you can see footage here, these are all videos made by our users, of people playing at home, in school, in university. It's used by some of the biggest businesses in the world to train their employees. Those elderly people you saw playing, that was one of the largest ever games, 4,000 seniors learning about what the internet is. So we didn't look at the institutional side of education. We looked at the human behavior of learning itself. Play was talked about in the previous talk, and play is actually one of our first languages. It's how we actually learn at the very beginning when we're children. What the pedagogy enables is, once you're engaged in this social learning space, it encourages you to take on the role of a game creator. So you get in groups, you learn collaboration skills, you learn research skills, you try and find things that you're truly interested in your life so that you can take that forward with you. And you create these games, and you end up being the person that gets to stand at the front. You take on the role of the teacher, flipping the model of the classroom when it's done in the classroom setting. And eventually, you're seen as the leader within the topic that you really care about. And so, when it comes to technology, I've already said, I think we need to flip our view of what education is before we can truly understand technology's role. However, to do that, I think we need to design more forward-thinking pedagogies that change the way people learn and rather than accepting the status quo that we see today. And so when we start to do that, we think about how we can design these technology experiences. We realize they need to be inclusive and adaptable to the needs of everyone, so that everybody is offered the privilege that we were lucky to have as we've gone through our journeys throughout life. And then when it comes to school and technology in that setting, whatever device we end up carrying around with us, perhaps that becomes our own personal learning companions. So maybe that is actually the only true entity that really knows us. Rather than using all of this data to sell advertising slots to us, why can't it help guide us throughout life? Help offer us the opportunities that we aren't given because we haven't had those moments of serendipity or intervention. Help make us the right decisions as we're going through our own journeys. And at school itself, technology should help maximize that precious social time that we have when we come together, which is extremely important still. We can't be disconnected. This picture you see here is from one of the companies we've invested in called Hold, and they actually reward you for not using your device. So this group of students have left their phones on hold whilst they are off focusing on something else together. And I think that's a very relevant pedagogy in today's world where we're always connected and always switched on. We need to learn to strike a balance between our online time and our offline time when we're together with people. And when it comes to online time, though, we should be able to connect to these like-minded people who share our purpose so that we can begin to understand how we can solve these challenges that are out in front of us. So in this world that will be driven by artificial intelligence, I think now reflects a really important point where technology can actually help us as humanity learn what it means to be human in this new unpredictable world that we're going towards and find our purpose and place within it. So my bold prediction, or maybe it's some wishful thinking to end with, is that we will flip our view of what education itself is, and that humanity will find its place in the new unpredictable world that we face. And that when we flip our view of education, we will see it as this self-directed journey that we're on. But if we're taught how to find the right opportunities and where our purpose lies, we will find happiness in that pursuit of fulfilling our potential. And I think if that happens for every individual and everyone's given the opportunity that today they're not currently given, then it will lead to a more collective happiness. And so in this new world that's run by the machines, humans will actually find a new destiny for themselves. And maybe the role of education now, guided by technology all along the way, is to actually preserve humanity itself. Thank you.